Part 1. The Great Performance and the Question That Refuses to Die. Have you ever had the unsettling feeling that the life you're living isn't truly yours? As if you're walking through a script, not one you wrote, but one penned by teachers, parents, polite society, and the invisible hand of what's expected. You wake each morning, put on the same old face, nod through small talk, fulfill obligations with mechanical grace. You smile, you perform, you function. But then, in the silence, when the noise dies down and the show ends for a moment, a single question appears. Not loud, but undeniable. Who am I, really? Carl Jung, the great cartographer of the soul, believed this question is not an accident. It's not a mood or a phase. It's a signal, a spiritual cough from the depths of your being. It means something essential has gone missing. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people live their entire lives without ever meeting themselves. They wear costumes so long, they forget the shape of their own skin. They play roles, student, spouse, employee, citizen, so convincingly. They forget they never auditioned for them. Worse still, they don't know that anything's wrong. They die as strangers to their own soul. But today you have a choice, a dangerous one, a beautiful one, to stop, to turn inward, to ask, not what should I do, but who have I become? Because what you call yourself, your personality, your beliefs, your preferences, may not be yours at all. They might be borrowed, planted, conditioned, and the only way back is inward. So let us begin. Not with answers, but with the courage to ask better questions. Because behind the mask, behind the noise, behind the mirror, someone has been waiting for you. Part 2. The Mask and the Masquerade of Modern Man. So let's speak plainly, but not simply. If life were a masquerade ball, then the persona, as Carl Jung called it, is the exquisitely crafted mask we glue to our faces so tightly that one day we forget there was ever skin beneath it. We're told from childhood, smile, don't raise your voice, be a good boy, a nice girl, a productive citizen. And slowly, like a sculptor chiseling away at marble, society chips away at the raw statue of our soul until what remains is a polished performance. We act differently at work, at home, with friends, online, like we're switching channels on a remote control, but the TV is always on. At first, it's harmless. The persona is useful. It greases the gears of civilization. Without it, dinner parties would turn into primal rituals. But the problem is not that we wear a mask. The tragedy is that we become it. You've done it. I've done it. We've all smiled when we wanted to scream, nodded when we wanted to object, laughed to fit in, stayed silent to belong. And here's the cruel twist. The persona gets applause, yes, but applause is not love. Approval is not fulfillment. And playing a role well does not mean the role suits your soul. You start waking up not to a new day, but to an old act. Life becomes a theater with no audience, just echo. And then, something inside whispers, where did I go? But the answer isn't outside. It isn't in changing jobs, finding the perfect partner, or collecting accolades. Those are just new costumes for the same mask. The truth, the terrifying, liberating truth, is that to find yourself, you must dare to remove the mask. And when you do, you won't just find light. You'll first find shadows. Part 3. The shadow, your uninvited guest. If the persona is the mask you wear to survive the world, then the shadow is everything you buried to survive yourself. It's the box under the bed you never open, the locked room in the mansion of your mind. It's the version of you that doesn't smile in photos, or worse, doesn't get invited. Carl Jung didn't romanticize the shadow. He understood it as the repressed, denied, often ugly, yet vital part of your soul. The part society told you to hide, the part you learned to fear, your anger, your jealousy, your inconvenient questions and chaotic feelings. Tucked away. But here's the twist. What you suppress doesn't vanish. It mutates. The anger you suppress, it doesn't dissolve, it festers. It leaks out in sarcasm, in passive-aggressive emails, in sudden outbursts at dinner tables. The envy you deny, it shapes your ambition in unhealthy ways, makes you crave what others have. Not because you want it, but because they do. Your shadow doesn't go away just because you pretend it's not there. Number. It squats in the basement of your being, lifting weights, getting stronger, waiting for its moment to rise. And rise it will. Ever snapped at someone and then wondered, why did I react like that? That's the shadow, my friend, hijacking the steering wheel. And here's the tragedy. Many parts of your shadow aren't evil. They're just misunderstood. Perhaps as a child you were curious but told you were annoying, so you learned to stay quiet. Maybe you were sensitive but told to man up, so you buried your tenderness. Maybe you had dreams, wild, beautiful ones, and someone called them unrealistic. So you became practical, safe, predictable. But those parts of you didn't die. They went underground. They became your ghosts, and ghosts do not rest. But here's where it gets beautiful. If you dare to descend into that basement, to face the snarling dog you thought was a monster, you might realize it's a wounded wolf longing to be seen. Because your shadow is not your enemy. It holds your lost creativity, your authenticity, your depth, your fire. You cannot be whole if you're only half seen. To truly live, you must not only wear the mask, you must also shake hands with the ghost behind it. Part 4. The self, becoming who you truly are. Now that we've met the mask and greeted the shadow, one might ask, is there anyone home behind it all? Is there a you untouched by performance, unswayed by fear? Jung called it the self, not the ego, not the identity you wear like a name tag at a networking event, but the deep, silent witness, the axis of your being, the one who watches the drama without acting and yet is the source of all true action. The self is not a costume. It is not a resume. It's not your Myers-Briggs result or your zodiac sign wrapped in aesthetic quotes. It's the underground spring from which all your rivers flow. But make no mistake, the self does not come knocking. It waits, patiently, like a wise old monk seated on the edge of your consciousness, offering nothing until you ask everything. To find it, you don't climb, you descend. You don't conquer, you surrender. You strip away the roles, the borrowed beliefs, the inherited guilt, the Instagram filters of the soul. This process, Jung named individuation, the lifelong dance of becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. It is the reconciliation between what you show and what you suppress, between the child you were told to hush and the adult you've been forced to perform. But here lies the great obstacle, fear. The fear of losing the identity you've polished for decades. The fear of realizing that your dream job was someone else's dream. The fear of meeting your own truth and realizing it isn't convenient, marketable, or polite. That fear, it keeps most people in exile from themselves. They cling to the familiar discomfort of masks and repeat roles until life becomes a loop, a broken record of almost living. But for those few who choose differently, something astonishing happens. You start to feel lighter, not in body, but in being. You no longer laugh when you don't mean it. You no longer chase validation like a thirsty man drinking salt water. And strangely, beautifully, life begins to fit. Not because life changed, but because you did. Your choices grow roots. Your yes carries weight. Your no longer requires apology. You stop editing yourself for the comfort of others. And in this rare alignment between your inner world and outer words, you discover a secret. Peace isn't passive. It's the reward of radical honesty. But beware, this journey isn't meant to be walked alone. Because in the next step, we must confront something even deeper. The invisible hands that write the script of our lives before we even learn to speak. These hands belong to what Jung called Part 5, the Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, Reclaiming the Script. If the self is your cathedral, then the archetypes are the stained glass windows. They shape the light. They color your perception. They're not chosen. They choose you. Jung once said, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." And within it dwell the archetypes, primordial patterns older than language, wiser than reason. They are not ideas you invent. They are the ideas that invented you. The hero, the sage, the rebel, the caregiver, the lover, the orphan, the destroyer. You've met them in fairy tales, religions, novels, in the trembling of your chest before a decision, or the way your eyes tear up at a story you've never lived. But somehow, remember, these archetypes don't merely exist in books. They live in you. They shape your reactions, your relationships, your longings. Ever wondered why you feel inexplicably drawn to a certain kind of story? Why you keep repeating the same relational patterns? Like clockwork, it's not fate. It's the script you never knew was in your hands. Here's the danger. When you live unconsciously, the archetypes possess you. You become the tragic hero, always sabotaging your ascent, or the martyr, always giving, never receiving, or the eternal child, terrified of responsibility, craving rescue. But the wise don't discard the archetypes. They integrate them. You learn to carry the sword of the hero without slaying yourself, to hear the whispers of the sage without becoming cold and detached, to feel the fire of the rebel without burning every bridge you walk on. Balance is not the suppression of your inner caste, it's giving them all a voice without letting any of them take the throne. And how do you find out which ones dominate your life? You watch, you listen, you dream. Dreams, after all, are nightly letters from the unconscious, written in the cryptic poetry of symbols. Ignore them, and you ignore the map. Because here's the truth no one tells you. You are not just an individual. You are a living archive of human memory. You are made of stories told long before you were born. And when you ignore those stories, those archetypes, you do not become free. You become controlled. But when you see them, name them, embrace them, you become the author, not the character, the conductor, not the instrument. You reclaim the pen and begin to write, not a perfect life, but an authentic one. And that is the real revolution.